Innovation is in our veins. Soon the whole world will know our names. Sharing our knowledge and freedom reign. We're here for the people, you know it's our way. Setting foundations is part of the dream. It doesn't matter if you're new to the game. Listen up now, cause we all gon' say, elevate, 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 higher, elevate, 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 higher. We gon' rise up, we all gon' shine. Work through adversity, stay on the grind. Elevate, elevate, this is our time. Elevate, elevate.
Welcome to the Elevate Podcast, everyone. It's so great to have you all on one more time. It's your boy Josh, and I'm grateful to be back on with you yet again. There is, it's been a crazy past 48 hours, I have to say. Lots to get into. First off, the mob that went after Poilievre on the Hill today was really interesting. It's probably one of the most lively sessions I've seen in terms of press corps on the Hill recently. The loudest I've heard them recently as well. It was really interesting. We're going to touch on that. Secondly, we'll also be talking about, we didn't start the fire. All the Canadian flags are burned over in BC yesterday by the pro-Hamas protests and all that, and all the jazz going on, as well as the continued proroguement of Parliament and all the jazz, and everything is just locked up. But also, to talk about this and so much else, we have our friend Jennifer Elle. Welcome to the show. How you holding up?
Good. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been some time, hasn't it? It's we're super stoked to have you. You were our first guest doing this live, which I wouldn't have it any other way. So we're really happy to have you. And the one thing is, what was it? For the past several months, you've been kind of doing your thing, getting your business set up, and then just recently, it seems like you've really recently started getting things posted on TikTok. What's that been like in terms of the process of getting back out there and making sure your content's being consumed by the millions and millions of people on TikTok?
Yeah, everything's been really great. It's been very, very busy, as you said. There has been, I would say, a slight shift in my content. And I think it's because most people that have followed me long enough know that I've went on the record previously to say that I'm not a huge fan about talking about deep First Nations issues, especially as it pertains to things like residential schools and stuff like that, because as you know, it upsets a lot of people, and I have to protect my energy and my space because my day-to-day is literally working on these issues. So I try to make my content, not so heavy at all times, but sometimes it just needs to be done.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you've been, I would say working overtime from my perspective. It seems like you're really popping out almost every other video in my feed at this point, which is talking about a pertinent issue that is happening with the Indigenous community and what's been happening. And obviously most recently, and trust me, people are listening, we will be getting into the core topics because this really goes well into it, is on September 30th, it was obviously Truth and Reconciliation Day. And, people feel some feelings about it one way or the other. I did a 20-minute tirade about it myself, of just people getting a little too caught up in their feelings on it, and people just really needing to give some space and allow some conversation around these tough issues. You had an interesting conversations. You had some interesting interactions online, most of which weren't all that positive, and you shared a lot about it. What happened from your perspective, and what was being said to you?
I think, Truth and Reconciliation Day is a day that inevitably is going to upset people because it's a call to action, right? The federal government implemented a call to action that they were asked to implement, and if they didn't, it would have caused them more backlash than actually implementing it. So there's that issue aside, but, I posted a photo on Twitter of me wearing an orange shirt, and basically he had said, we're the descendants and grandchildren of the Indians that they tried to eliminate, which is what happened. And that really upset some people. And I saw this TikTok not that long ago where this girl was talking in this TikTok video about how as a society, we are now becoming to the point where people cannot handle even generalized statements. And I think that's true in this case because there were people coming into my replies, applying that statement to themselves. They're no, my family has been living here for however long. And I'm not a settler. I'm not this. And it's whoa. I never said that. I never tagged you in this post. I never attacked you in this post. You got to chill out a little bit. Some of you guys are literally taking something and applying it to yourself and getting yourself worked up about something. If you're not guilty or you didn't facilitate heavy Indigenous issues like residential schools and stuff like that, then you should be on our side. Chill out,
Absolutely. That was more so the sentiment I had. I didn't set up the schools. I didn't make sure they were running. I don't take it personally, but what I think is really interesting and kind of from trying to see from that perspective of when you have a people that's been so gaslit by the government, they just seem to like get really sensitive around these types of issues. Like they start admitting things that aren't even so true. Like obviously the one thing that people kept conflating, I found, was the whole issue with the bodies and then the residential schools, and people then conflating the two, saying none of it ever happened. And I was like, you can separate those two, and we can figure out what's going on here, but residential schools happened and they weren't a positive thing. Is that kind of what you found what was happening? People just like really just coming at you hard because of that, or is it another issue?
I think so. And I think like I had read this this piece that was put out, which I had shared on Twitter, which some academic researchers actually looked into the percentage of the media that had used the term mass graves back in 2021. And it was like 6 point some percent. Like it was a small chunk of the media. But now there's like this subset of the population that are like, well, I'm tired of being lied to. I'm tired of, people telling me it's mass graves when it's not. And I'm, it's leading to church burnings and all of these things, which is entirely a good concern, because when people are fueling the fire of things, it inevitably has a domino effect. But at the same time, a majority of these people aren't acting in good faith, because I've actually engaged with them. And there was one the other day where I was like, can you actually show me any recent articles where people are still talking about mass graves? Because to me, I'm not seeing any of the large mainstream media actually using that term, and like poof, gone. They just stopped replying to me. And I'm like, so it's like, are you concerned about the terminology being used, or are you more so just not liking that we're talking about this? Because the more you engage with them, the further they go down the rabbit hole of not even wanting to have the conversation, where it's like, even that one lady, that PPCer that was commenting on my stuff, where I had an entire thread that kind of rebutted almost everything, where I'm like, hey, like, you're not going to be, trigger warning, you're not going to be digging up bodies that are 100 years old. Do you guys not understand how science works? And, I'm having this discussion. She's just like, hashtag where are the bodies? I'm like, hey, you're bad faith. I'm done engaging with you.
Gosh.
Like, no, thank you.
Not hashtag where are the bodies.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, those shirts are going around a lot. That was wild. And, but yeah, that was kind of more so from yourself than others. That's kind of what I was getting at, or what the message I was receiving was, that's not even really being discussed right now. It's like, no, let's acknowledge what's happened and move forward stronger and together. And that's kind of why I think I saw a post of yours recently where that's almost exactly what you said verbatim. Isn't that what you said? I think it was yesterday.
Like I don't think we can move forward without fully acknowledging what happened. And that is another thing, is people come into my Twitter comments or my TikTok comments or wherever, and they'll say, it's time for you to move on, get a job like everybody else, stop being a freeloader, stop this, stop. It's like, whoa, like, I hope you're kidding. Like, I put myself through university, I own a home, I own a business, I'm being taxed twice, income and corporate tax. It's like, I can assure you that I'm just as much feeling like a Canadian as you are. But at the same time, you can't not acknowledge the fact that government suppression of Indigenous people for over 100 years is going to have inevitably some type of impact on our population and on our society. And we're seeing it. We're seeing in homelessness, addictions, prison systems. Like, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation. And once we kind of accept that, and as a society are more inclusive to understanding the impacts that has, we're not moving forward. But these people just want to like not discuss that and just move forward. So essentially what they're telling you is just shut up and stop talking about it.
Yep, that's that.
Tell me how you really feel.
Yeah, and that's what honestly, and how I really did appreciate about this kind of watching all the back and forth happen over the course of that day. Was where those conversations were happening, which in some cases I was kind of happy that they were, because I think that's kind of where the misconception happens, and people just not fully understanding, like, oh, okay, like, you want to move forward past this as much as I do. We just need to have an acknowledgement, and then we move forward. It's just like, there's a little bit, I could be wrong. You probably see it more than I would. But there's times where, I don't know, the white liberals really want to go down the guilt train as well, which really puts people off too. I could be off by that. That's kind of my perception.
And no, 100%. There's also people that exist that are also very much a part of the problem, just in other ways, because we are talking about, wanting to move forward, and people say, okay, well, we've talked about it. But at the same time, there's still a number of big issues that we need to address. And that's the fact that there are a lot of people that genuinely, at the end of the day, don't understand what a nation-to-nation agreement is. And they're saying, well, why can't First Nations just integrate with the rest of society? That's not the way the treaties work. That's not nation-to-nation agreements. I'm sorry, that's going to bother some people, but that's the truth. But at the same time, we have our ancestors, I'm the fifth great grandchild of one of the ones who signed Treaty 4 that, entered into these agreements with our crown. And then years later, down comes the Indian Act. And even to this day, my identity is essentially registered and defined by our federal government. And, the Indian Act has domesticated us. We only just got child welfare back, and the Supreme Court recognized that within the last couple of years. So we didn't even have jurisdiction or the autonomy over our own children on community. So there's a lot of big issues, but that paternalism from the government is still flowing through, and modern day liberals are very much a part of it. If you don't vote the way they tell you to, or sit the way they tell you to, stand the way they tell you to, you're a part of the problem as well. So it's coming from all different sides.
For sure. And that was for me, I don't know if you saw Pierre Poilievre's message on that day, which I thought was a good message for being able to kind of bridge that gap a bit and help people understand how they're feeling. It's all right, you've been feeling like there's been government overreach in your life. You've been not liked how things are being taught in the education system. You've not liked vaccines being put on people without their say-so, go on, so forth. The government had some serious overreach in this area too. And there's literally some connection that can happen. It's like, oh, I'm feeling it in this way. I can only imagine what it was like feeling it in that way. And we both can hate on the government and what they did. I think there's at least something there. I'm not saying that they're equal in any stretch of the imagination, but that's at least a start to help people realize and have some empathy and to realize, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't like that feeling. I can only imagine how that felt. And we can move forward.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really unique, especially for Indigenous people even existing in politics. And I've been, hammering home about this for years. But I think just the biggest issue is there's just a big, large misconception. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who think they're helping and they're not. And, we have progressives on one side as well that are, at the end of the day, causing harm. They're literally sitting there creating more harm. And it's frustrating because it's like, I'm sitting here, running a business, paying all kinds of taxes, I just renewed my mortgage this week. There's a lot of big issues that I still have to deal with. And then I have people saying, well, you're a First Nations person, you shouldn't vote this way or vote this way. It's like, at the end of the day, until we achieve full sovereignty, I'm still existing just like you. And until you pay my bills, I'm not taking your advice. It's just not happening.
Well, the thing is, I think the government wants to pay your bills here very soon, is what I'm gathering.
According to my comments, I am missing a lot of money, and apparently there is a lot of time off that I could be taking because apparently I need to get a job, according to a lot of people, which is, yeah. And that one kind of bothered me because I'm like, I could really use some time off.
I've been working since I was 13. What the heck? Yeah, totally. Well, I think that kind of moves well into kind of an area that you have strength in. Unless there's anything you want to expand upon, you have the floor as well. Before we move on.
No.
You're good.
No, don't bring me down that train because then I won't stop, and then everyone will just unsubscribe.
Yeah, then we're in a 3-hour podcast at this point, live on YouTube. Here we go. Well, I have to admit, the comments are popping off right now. A lot of people have a lot of feedback and perspectives on various things that you've shared. But this goes into kind of a conversation that happened earlier this week, where we have Angus Reid, the man who founded the polling, is said that thanks. I watched the whole thing. Trudeau is continuing to reinforce the hate aimed at the Catholic Church, spinning a tale of mass atrocities that has not been proven. So he said that in a tweet, again, referring to and answering to someone who, was talking about, him referring to the Catholic Church burnings, this, that, the other. Do you think, I know the left is running with this, but from like a more of a moderate perspective, do you think this disparages any polling that comes out of Angus Reid now?
I think there is a lot of critical thinking that needs to be done here. Do I think that his take is going to affect his methodology and how he delivers his data? No. But at the same time, it is undermining the public's trust into his polling firm as a whole, because there's already a lot of misconceptions and a lot of trust that's lacking, especially as it comes to polling in Canada. And I think that, it kind of brings that conversation piece to the forefront of like, how are you engaging in your methodology now? Like if you're so, biased or partisan, not saying that he is in one way or another, how can Canadians trust that the methodologies in which you're using to obtain that data isn't based off of your own partisan views or biased views? And how is that being delivered back to Canadians? I think that's obviously a fair question that people are going to have.
Yeah, and I think it is a fair question. It's just that the fact that if someone who's in the space, so this is where I get confused with him, where how things are perceived, where things are going to go, and the fact he still came out in public, talked about this in a situation and in a time and place where people distrust our established institutions so much. Why would you aside from he was fuming, he was fired up, he wanted to put his voice out there. I'm curious, he may not have been thought that one all the way through, because it's gonna as there's been so much BS floating around about, none of these polls say what I want them to say, so they're all fake. This doesn't help. Are you feeling that at all? Because I know you posted about it too, where it's like, this isn't going to help the polling institutions by him coming out like this.
Yeah, I think there's that fact that this is obviously not going to help polling. And I say that respectfully, because we have, liberal partisans that have been living on the internet saying all polling data is completely made up and Trudeau's heading into the biggest victory of his entire life. Like there's actually people that think that. And then there's also the people that are like, okay, like I respect the polling, but I kind of want you to stay out of it. And at the same time, a lot of these polling firms, I'm not sure about Angus Reid, are actually receiving a large amount of money from the federal government. So that's an issue in and itself, that a lot of them are government funded. Trudeau actually upped the amount of funding that polling firms get. But I also think and this might be a hot take, there's that portion of the population as well that they're living online. Like this is all new to a lot of people, because as more and more time is spent online, there's more and more opportunity for people to insert their opinions in things, to pick apart those opinions. That happened to me on Truth and Reconciliation Day, where, I make one tweet and people just turn it into an essay, right? Like they're taking a statement and they're drawing the rest of the conclusions from that. But just because somebody owns a business or is in the polling space or whatever they're doing, doesn't mean they're also a communications expert. Everybody's human. Everybody deals with emotions in their own way. And I would have liked to see him just say, dude, sorry, deleting that tweet, just going to kind of back off. Burning churches is still unacceptable, but I was wrong about this specific instance. Story's done. But then you come back and you start like doubling down and you're like, yeah, this is a cesspool. People are truing on. Like you're asking for a fight at this point. And I admit that as somebody that very much drop kicks the hornet's nest at least once a week. So.
Yeah, that's those are good points. And that is fairly kind of what I gathered from it as well. And have you come across Polymarket yet? I'm curious.
Polymarket?
Yeah. So it's
no.
It's a crypto based website, but people can essentially bet on anything in culture. So the big one was people are betting on who's going to win the U.S. election. People can bet on who's going to win the provincial election BC, the provincial election New Brunswick. That I find is probably some of the most accurate polling, because you are actually putting your physical dollars on like who you think is going to win. So I was going through it this week and I was like, this is like a very interesting polling where it's like, okay, like people are now putting their money where their mouth is. Is this an accurate way of polling? I don't know. But I thought it was just kind of an interesting idea.
Is that legal?
We don't know yet.
I'm like, wait, what? Because think about the implications from that. Like, if somebody is like in sports, right? Like people will willingly lose. I'm not saying they will, hypothetically. Like, if you bet on, you know what I mean? Like that, how is that legal?
Well, the thing that went through my mind, at least with the American election that happened back in 2020, right, where there was such a cloud over the result. I'm like, there's going to be an official result, but there's going to be one side or the other is not going to agree with the result. So where's the money happen in there? That's where I think it can get a little like dicey. Or like, we'll see what happens. Again, I don't know how it's legal, but at the same time, I'm still seeing a lot of gambling commercials every time I watch a sporting event. So I guess we're all good now. So.
Oh God, that is hilarious. Can we also talk about the fact that Reg is in the comments? Like the fact that you're not here, but you have the audacity to come into the comments. Like, sir, get him on here. Get him the link. Because we know he's not busy.
Oh man. Okay. You know what? Just because you said so, he's getting the link right now. His
called out.
His job won't let him to come on, but you know what? We'll send him the link anyways. You should just hire him. And we can solve this right now. Oh man.
That's funny.
No, we're actually really, we love Reg. We love him as a moderator. We actually have like a team working behind the scenes now, believe it or not, Jennifer. I don't know if you can believe it. So it's funny. Our team got bigger once our on-camera crew got smaller. It was interesting. So now we got a group of ghostwriters behind me for my one-man show. So it's really exciting. But it was really just because you stopped coming on and Reg got the can. That's what happened, right? So
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what happens, man. But I will get into what have you been catching so far with like the unofficial program of Parliament. Speaker came forward, said that we are not continuing Parliament business until Trudeau gives up the documents of the SDC Green Slush Fund to the RCMP. And they still haven't given the documents yet. And the speaker's like, yeah, well, I guess business is halted. And it is within Trudeau's power to officially prorogue Parliament, but now he's just doing it by his actions. How long do you think this could lock up? I came on the record last week on the show here saying, I think a proroguing of Parliament is a big win from my perspective. This government's been so bad that I'm okay that they don't do anything. If they don't do anything, that's a huge positive from my perspective. But how long can this actually go? And I didn't look into it, but I was curious from your perspective, do you know if there's even a limit of how long Parliament can be prorogued for?
Actually, admittedly, I don't know the answer to that question. I'll obviously rely on the people in the comments to answer that one. But that proroguing is one thing, and trying to prorogue and reset the government and come back with a new speech from the throne, which I don't even think would pass. Or he could essentially try to head into an election. But my thing right now is like, how much longer can we go on like this? Like, no matter where you stand on the political spectrum, Parliament is deeply dysfunctional at this point. And my concern as someone, that comes in with an understanding of political science and the way governments function and blah, 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 is I just worry about the overall society now in Canada, just looking at our government as just unserious. Like at this point, everything just feels unserious. And I was traveling actually last night with a few people that I work with in some capacity. And we started talking about how like desensitized we're becoming, where like what is a major scandal, even during the Harper years is like nothing now. Like we're just desensitized. Like I feel like this party just kind of got to the point where they were like, I don't care, and we're just going to keep doing what we need to do. And the fact that Reg is in here now is making, I'm trying to be serious, but Parliament is just deeply ineffective and dysfunctional. And one might say that us as a whole, right here, right now, are also dysfunctional. Like the audience is like you guys should be talking.
I love it. Absolutely. Yeah. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Justin Trudeau just needs to like prorogue. Like that's what I did with our group chat. Like I just said, this is enough. And I'll like, that's enough for me for right now, which is essentially what our prime minister needs to do.
Yeah. Well, our prime minister needs to take a hint and just like, maybe fly the coop. He's kind of not wanting the party right now. And the way that we're seeing things pull right now, we're seeing that he's standing to basically destroy the Liberal Party. And it's funny because I was actually looking at Brian Mulroney back in the day when he introduced GST and the crushing defeat that followed for the Conservative Party. I'm like, did Trudeau not learn from history? Like, you throw in a tax there, you piss everybody off, and then your party is basically decimated for the next few cycles. And it's going to take, some strong leadership and people to bring that back. I don't know what's going to happen. And like you said, like, Parliament right now is deeply dysfunctional. Trust is at an all-time low. People can't even tell like what's up and what's down anymore. And it's just, they've got Canada in chaos right now. They need a change. I mean, whether or not you believe in the Liberals or the NDP or the Conservatives, there just has to be change so that people can feel hopeful.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think they've kind of backed themselves into a corner at this point. I think maybe if they would have recognized this a year ago when a lot of us were talking about this and we were called, I still think about some of the people not naming names, even like when talking about polling data a year ago, I'm like, they'd say, oh, well, in the 2019 and 2021 elections, I'm like, number one, the polling data today is consistently and evidently different than what was in 2019, 2021. But also like, this government has been in power for 9 years. Like, what do you guys think? And we have people out there that are legitimate, like polls are fake. And then they're going to Uno reverse because they're going to maintain the fact that polling data is fake and that Trudeau is very, very popular to the point where they're going to lose the election. And then the narrative that day is going to switch to they cheated and they stole the election. Like I can guarantee it. I'm telling you now.
Wait, you're telling us right now that you think it's gonna come down to that where they think they stole the election?
Oh, 100%.
100%.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
I could probably name names right now where I'm like, watch this person's account after the next election. And I guarantee you, get that money betting site up here. And I will bet you that those accounts, and I could like, I think he's just either he's going to double down or he'll just fade away into the wind, like Homer Simpson into the bushes. Like,
oh yeah.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, I think that I just wanted to make sure I got you to double down on that on live YouTube, just because, I thought it was a pretty hot take, but I don't disagree with it either. The issue I'm having is, regardless of what the election goes to, similar to what's happening in the States, no one's going to concede, I don't think. I think politics are that hot right now that they just, regardless, they're not going to concede the loss.
I think that's one of the big issues right now because they're eating their own now. Like there's like, I follow a great deal of Liberals on social media. I follow NDPers, I follow Conservatives. I try my best not to follow PPCers unless I want to get bullied that day. But there are a lot of Liberals that I like respect. Like they're not Conservatives. And that's the biggest thing is just because the government of the day is tired and it needs to go and Justin Trudeau is largely ineffective does not mean that your political ideology needs to change. Like, it's okay to be like, listen, and Conservatives did it with Erin O'Toole. Like, there were plenty of Conservatives that were like, I'm still a Conservative. I just don't like this leader. And it's okay to admit that. But I think they feel like they're conceding to Conservatives if they say, listen, like, yeah, I admit this guy's ineffective. I still don't like you, but my guy's ineffective and I kind of want him to go and switch over and I'm still a Liberal. Like, that's okay.
It's totally fair. Reggie, anything you want to say on that?
No, I kind of completely agree with that because people need to actually show some backbone and say, like, listen, this leader is not the leader that we're hoping for, that we wanted, and he needs to go, and we need to be okay with that. And I think that people can, exactly what you said, Jen, like, people can say, I believe in conservative values. I am a liberal values. I am a traditional liberal, and this government does not reflect what I believe. And, like, that needs to be something that we can say and be okay. Because I find that what happens is that you get people who are like, they double down in the same way we talked about doubling down earlier. They double down on this ridiculous belief system that they have to support everything 100%. It's like, no, there's nuances. There's gray areas. You can not support this government and not support this party as it stands right now, but still consider yourself a classic liberal. Like, and that needs to be okay.
But with that being said, Conservatives could also take a lesson from this because their candidate can wear a tie they don't like that day, and there's a secret petition that's already launched to get rid of that person. So it's like Jersey Shore on like who wrote the note. Nobody's like, I don't know who wrote that petition to this day, but like Aaron O'Toole had barely lost the election, and like 3 seconds later there was a website launched. I'm like, that's suspicious.
Aaron O'Toole not a good choice from the beginning. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I never liked him. I was like, why did they pick him?
That's totally fair. Yeah, it's we won't go down that road there at the moment. Reg, I realized it was a mistake to bring you on because I realized having your video cut in actually messed up everything I've set up on my desktop.
No.
I'm so sorry. So I can't actually show my camera anymore, but it was great. I think this transitions well into our next topic that you probably can't be on here for, because we're talking about the burning of our Canadian flag in BC.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that one. We all know how I feel about that. I can't talk about it because I don't want to get fired.
Oh, true. We don't want to get fired today.
Yeah. Well, you guys can talk about fire, and I'll not be fired. So anyway, see you guys. Have
Awesome.
a good one.
Appreciate
Bye.
it. Have a good one, Reg.
That's okay. If somebody wants to report me to my employer, they're welcome to. Somebody actually reported me a couple weeks ago, and then I had to facilitate an employee complaint about myself.
Okay, walk me through what happened there. How'd that work?
There was just somebody that was being less than respectful on social media, and I would really, I can't even walk you through what happened because I'm still trying to process how this gentleman got through all of these steps without at any point cluing in to what he was doing. So this guy goes to my website and goes to the Instagram, my business's Instagram, and says that, I don't know if you saw the screenshot, I talked about it on TikTok, but he basically said your employee, Jennifer Elle, is racist towards Europeans.
What?
Like, she said, yes, she's racist towards Europeans because he was being racist, and I told him to knock it off. I didn't say anything racist. He did. He was being very, very racist. He's like, she was being racist towards Europeans because I said that First Nations people aren't working. I'm like, number one, that's kind of racist. And number two, how is that? What are you even talking about? But I wanted to know at what point he thought messaging a First Nations owned business to say, I really want you to have my back here, that no First Nations people are working. Like, come on. And I replied with my name, and then I said, that is indeed racist. And I said, Jennifer, CEO. And he instantly blocked me. He was like, goodbye.
I'm done. Yeah, I think the part of that, it's like, it's not even like it's a kind of a Anglophone named company. It's Pasqua Harbor. Like, at what point, there's a feather in the logo.
Who do you think is going to be on your side here? Like, I can assure you that every person that I work with will have my back for fighting back against people being racist. Like, they would expect nothing else.
Oh man, what a time, eh? That's crazy. That's the beauty of running your own business. It's like, all right, I am the HR, I'm the CEO, and I can do whatever I want. So come get some. Yeah, that's amazing. But kind of fast forwarding to, we're more sensitive topics and things that have been getting really heated, especially talking about, it's been coming up in Parliament a lot, is October 7th. And, it happened here in Halifax. There was a huge rally planned by a Free Palestine group. They decided to cancel because they were getting quote unquote threats of violence. And I was like, wow, surprise, surprise, wonder why. And then, but there were some rallies across the country that still transpired on October 7th. And there was one that transpired yesterday where it ended with people burning and tearing the Canadian flag. And for me personally, I don't know, like I've never, when it comes to the burnings of flags, I've never like been viscerally annoyed or frustrated by it. Like I'd see the American flag burned, a lot in protests or whatever. And you're just like, yeah, okay, like that stinks, but I'm not like bent out of shape about it. But for some reason, this one really hit home for me. Like I had a visceral reaction to this one where I was actually like upset by it. And I was like, oh, that didn't feel nice. That felt disrespectful. I think this one's a little different just because they've been very clear that they want to take out Canada. And and I wish I could say I was exaggerating, but that's just the reality. So from your perspective, like, how does a politician deal with this? How do they handle it? How do they go about it? We see what the Liberals are doing, and they're being very cautious because technically that's their voter base. But the Conservatives are coming out outright, helps that Melissa Lantsman has a high position in the shadow cabinet. They're both taking pretty much two different stances on this. What do you think, if you're a politician and you're seeing this transpire, what are you doing to like calm things down among your constituents?
I think, you know, as a country, we have inevitably let this go on for far too long. And I don't mean in the sense of, you know, protesting, because that is a right. People have the right to protest. But at the same time, it's not just happening, you know, on the far left or whatever. Like, it's getting to the point where people more and more want to push their limits and see what they can get away with. But at the same time, I personally stand back and almost feel like it's putting cracks in our democracy, like, and the foundation of our democracy. Like, you know, I get in an argument with PPCers where they say, well, I want absolute free speech. And it's like, well, you know, you have a right to speech, but you don't have a right to not face consequences. But it almost makes you wonder, but why? Like, don't get me wrong, I don't think we need to bring in legislation to further crack down on Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it is becoming more and more concerning that people want to be able to just go online and just like say some of the most atrocious stuff because they just want to be able to do it. And it's the same with the burning of the flag. Some people might say, well, it's just a material thing. It's just, you know, an inanimate object. Like, it's not actually a living thing. But at the same time, to me, it's a symbol. It's a symbol of something much more than that. Because when I, you know, even as a First Nations person, I walk in two worlds inevitably, and it's tough to walk in both those worlds. But at the same time, you know, my great grandpa fought in the war. He was a First Nations man, a Cree, that fought in the war and came back to a country that didn't even recognize him as a full human being. But he still fought for the foundations of the democracy that we live in today. And I feel like as a society, we're becoming so comfortable in just existing and testing our limits, where I'm scared to see where that goes, because we used to be, you know, much more orderly almost. And now it's like, I don't know, to me, that's scary. I don't see any benefit in watching people burn the Canadian flag in the street and say things like death to Canada. I don't see the positive in that. And, you know, if my ancestors suffered tremendously under government rule, but now walking in those two worlds where I respect the average Canadian citizen, I respect the people before me that suited up and went to war for our country. You know, on Remembrance Day, I'm waking my kids up and I'm like, let's go. We're going to Remembrance Day ceremonies. Like, I believe we all have a part to play in the foundation of our country. And I think that if you're playing an active role in trying to dismantle democracy or dismantle the safety that Canadians have a right to feel, I don't respect that.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And I do appreciate, again, the perspective that you're coming at it from too, where, you know, you have a different cultural background, but you still respect the foundations of what we currently have and what we've grown to be able to be grateful to have. And that was kind of how I felt too, where, you know, it's nationalism has become a filthy word. I personally would like to take that term back. Of it being a positive thing, just having pride in people who you share a country with, being able to take pride in the laws that we have here, where, yeah, we're not perfect, but we're still striving to be better, where we can give opportunity to people to be able to start a business, to be able to make a living for themselves and their families, not to be subject to so much government red tape. And now here I go, sound like a Pierre Poilievre commercial, but that's just kind of, you know, how I feel. So when I saw this, I was like, oof, I'm not having any pleasant things that are coming to mind right now. Like, this one's really frustrating me. And then to see Parliament transpire and, you know, Pierre Poilievre ask Mélanie Joly, the Foreign Affairs Minister, are you gonna, you know, denounce anything that's being said about the Israeli people and the things that are being done in the streets? And she kind of just, we still stand with Israel people on October 7th, and didn't answer the question. And I was like, yikes. Yeah, like that was like a pretty like we can all disagree, like we can all agree that that's a bad thing. And so for I think it was Pierre Poilievre, his exact quote on that day from the Parliament was, "Melanie Joly continues to pander to Hamas," is what he said in Parliament, which got him essentially the speaker told him that you can't ask any questions today after he said that because he wouldn't take it back. I know like there's this line that happens of what's a decorum that happens in the House. It's like, did that cross the line of decorum, or like what, like from your perspective, someone who's in politics to a degree, like what was crossing the line with that?
Yeah, so I'll come back to that. I want to respond to your point about the nationalism because I don't even think we need to, apply terms to basic human decency and how you act as a citizen of Canada or anyone, like I'm having a really hard time saying that that's what it is because it's not like any of this is new. I maybe we'll get into the conversation around the church burnings, but like this doesn't need to be overcomplicated, and we don't need a bunch of theorists to come in and pick an issue like this apart. At the end of the day, it is illegal to light a building on fire and vandalize it, plain and simple. Just don't do that. And then add the religious component into it, that this is a place, and don't get me wrong, this was no longer being used as a church. So that's important to the context, because do I know whether or not these people knew it was a church yet or not? I don't know. Nobody actually knows whether or not these people knew it was a church when they burnt it down. So there's that issue people are picking apart. But number one, don't vandalize and burn down buildings. That's not going to help your cause. Number two, especially don't do it if it's a religious institution or place of worship. Again, don't know if this was still being operated as a church, but just don't. Like, if you think that's going to help and bring unity together and everyone's going to be on your side, like, you don't get through things by being destructive like that. You just don't. You're attacking an entire population of the people. That's not going to solve anything. And I don't agree with that in any capacity. I think the minute you start vandalizing and burning things, it's just, I have no use for that. But to your second point, the decorum in the House, I think traditionally decorum has been very, very important. I think there's always been this certain level of respect for politicians, and people like to cite that history of, people used to be able to work together. I worked for an MP that is exemplary. Oh, I can't even say the word, but he exemplifies decorum. Like, he's a very honorable and respectful human being. He would never act like that. But at the same time, we're no longer in this stage where anything feels like it used to be either. Like, people say, well, Parliament used to be a very, very respectful place. Yeah, well, Parliament also used to fall over the smallest of scandals. And now it's like there's no lengths in which a government can't not go to without it just continuing going. So it's really hard to say. It's like we're applying measurements to things that no longer exist.
Yeah, that was kind of, goes back into another thing that happened with Pierre on the Hill today when he was getting scrummed by a bunch of by the press corps. And one of the questions that was asked was like, is there anything that you would work with this government on that you guys can find some common ground and move forward on? And Pierre, I was like, looked back at at those who were behind him, Melissa being one of them, and he's like, have they done anything that would want us to work with them? And no. He's like, I would work with them to get rid of the carbon tax. I would work with them to remove red tape on building housing. And it was just like, I was like, I did appreciate that answer, because I was like, it just showed you how far apart they are on issues, where it's like, they just don't agree with how to get things done. And I think that really speaks to your point there, where things are so tense and are so divided that, decorum's not really a thing anymore, I would say, because we've seen it in question period. We've seen it in this Parliament where both are pointing across the aisle saying they're un-Canadian. When you're at that point, when both sides are saying that, something bad and something has seriously gone wrong.
Yeah, and I think, again, I wonder what that looks like for Canadians watching from the outside in, and there are ways to work together. It's not as black and white as people think, and I say this as somebody that literally worked within, Parliament, is that, like, you don't need to support government legislation. Like, our opposition party is going to oppose. Like, that's what they do, right? Because they think that they're the government in waiting that can do it better. So do I expect our opposition party to push forward a budget that they don't write and wouldn't do that way? No. Do I expect them to push forward legislation that they didn't write and probably don't agree with? No. But at the same time, traditionally, there have been ways that Parliament have worked together. Private members' bills are a prime example of that, because private members' bills can't spend taxpayer dollars. So it's usually an opportunity to do something. And not just that, there are other, ways that they can work together. An MP might need something done for their constituency and they're in the opposition party, and they can go to the minister and say, hey, this organization in my riding put forward this grant. They need you to help them out. There's traditionally been ways of working together. And I think that's also being affected. And we're becoming so divided that I don't even think is working effectively anymore.
I think you broke it down very well of like what has gone wrong. I appreciate that answer. And I think that's just kind of where it leaves us in a place where we see what's going on in the streets. We see the violence taking place up here now. This used to be a thing where we'd watch it happen south of the border and be like, whoa, couldn't you believe what's happening in the USA? And then now it's here. And in a lot of ways we've allowed, as you said, we've allowed it. The typical good nature of Canadians has been taken advantage of, where it's like, oh, maybe they didn't mean it that way, or maybe they were trying to get at this and they're just using the wrong approach. And it's like, no, these people just don't like you, and they're making it very clear. Yeah. Like it's black and white now. And I can't say, I just don't know where we go from here. Like aside from politicians coming forward and speaking against it, like where that leaves the regular Canadian, I don't know. Especially if this government continues to be allowed to operate as they are, people are going to start getting more desperate than they already are. They already can't afford the groceries and their housing. And then they're going to start seeing people take a tax on their identity as abroad. Like, I don't know where this goes.
I think that's been an issue. I was talking about this on TikTok last year, and people were mad at me for saying that, where, there's that conversation where people say, oh, well, this is provincial or this is provincial. Be mad at your premiers. Number one, absolutely. We're currently in the election period in Saskatchewan right now. Make the decisions that you want to make. But at the same time, let's not pretend that our federal government is not playing an active role in this, because you can blame the provinces all you want. You can blame the feds all you want. But at the end of the day, when you have, a single mom going to the grocery store who can't afford to buy her child healthy food, or you have a person that's choosing between paying their rent and paying for food or whatever it might be, and then they turn on the television or they look at the media and it's Justin Trudeau saying that, Canadians are doing great, everything is fine. And it's only in the last year where that messaging has actually started to change, where it's like, okay, we do recognize Canadians are having a little bit of a hard time. We're going to be the ones to get you out of it. But it's almost like it's too late. Like, you can't gaslight people out of this. And I am getting concerned. I would be lying to you if it's not concerning to leave my house and see, the most homeless people I've ever seen. And I live in a city that's majority First Nations. Like, I would say 90% of the people that are homeless are First Nations people. It's a federal responsibility, but it's just been so mismanaged and everything's just been a mess. And then I turn on the media and the government is again fighting First Nations people in court, but we have liberals sitting online saying no one loves reconciliation more than the Liberal government. Really? Because I've never seen a government fight First Nations people in court this much. In 1 year, they spent tens of millions of dollars fighting First Nations people in court. Within the first 4 years, Justin Trudeau spent more fighting First Nations people in court than Harper did during his time in government. Like, Cernak spent more in one fiscal year than the other two large departments. The only department that spent more than Crown Indigenous Relations was the CRA. And just think about that for a second on how much the CRA has to spend in legal fees to fight people on taxes and stuff like that. Like, yet again, today, media, First Nations in court, of course we are. And it's just like nothing you say at this point is going to bring you out of this mess, because everything is just getting worse. And to just say, well, it's the provinces. Well, no, it's also the federal government. It's trickling down to our provinces. And yeah, our premiers do have a role to play in this, but it's getting bad. And I am honestly getting concerned.
So I didn't know about any of that. I didn't know that.
By the way, tell me how you really feel about that too.
Yeah, I'll get into it. Yeah, I legitimately, I didn't know that. I'm curious. I'm sure there's a myriad of issues that they're going to court over, which I'm sure a lot of it has to do with land. But like, I that is quite frankly probably one of the more damning statistics that I've heard shared, that this government's been in court more with Indigenous people than Harper ever was, which that was the big knock on Harper was the fact that he just ignored Indigenous relations altogether. That's saying something.
I think, there obviously is some important context to that. The fact that, in today's day and age, legal fees are obviously going to cost more. So there's the inflation portion to the legal fees. But there's also been some big issues where this government that talks nonstop about reconciliation has been tested on child welfare. They were fighting First Nations kids in court. First Nations policing. Oh, we love First Nations. But it's that is one of the number one issues that I really want people to recognize, is that now more than ever, our nations across the country are asserting jurisdiction. They're asserting their autonomy. They're trying to advance sovereignty, and they are being met with this. They're being met with a government that says, whoa, 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 is this good for our business model? Because back in 2017, we split the departments. We ballooned the bureaucracy. Not this liberal government loves facilitating the Indian Act. We have 2 departments now. But at the same time, it's they've had their opportunity to really showcase reconciliation, and it's met with, resistance almost always, and it's sickening.
Yeah, I hear it in your voice, and I don't blame you for it at all. And I do appreciate you taking the time to share that, because I think our listeners appreciate your candor in general. We appreciate the fact that you were able to, as you say, you walk in 2 worlds, and you do a good job of walking that fine line. And I can appreciate that, just as speaking as someone who does a show like this, but as well as a friend. I really do appreciate kind of where you come from and what you've taught me over the years, and then dropping knowledge like that. That's much appreciated. And you're right. It just, it's, you're seeing it in your communities. We're seeing it here in Halifax, Nova Scotia as well. Just, what you'll get a crack out of this. So right now, a Liberal MP, Andy Fillmore, realized that he's not going to win the next election, next federal election. So he decided to go run for mayor here in Halifax. And he's smoking the polls because no one else is really running. Right now he's up 45%, and the next closest person's at 13. He's smoking the polls. But he was asked a question in one of the debates, was all right, what are you going to do about all the homeless encampments here in downtown Halifax? How are you going to take care of it? In true liberal fashion, he's like, we need to get the police and move them out. I was like, great, because that's been working so well. But I'm like, that's his solution. And I'm like, yep, you're definitely from the Trudeau era, 100%. And I just can't get on board with this man. The fact that that is going to run our city. He's clearly, he has a background in city planning, but he clearly probably could never get a job in the private sector ever again. So he's begging, hoping for a job from the municipality, and he's likely going to get it, which bums me out. But yeah, it's how it goes.
Well, and that's another issue now as well, is when you lose that ability to work together, which everyone's responsible for this. I know that there's people that are, pro Poilievre and they're pro conservative, but at the same time, I'm concerned about the precedents that this sets, because we're going to have a bunch of new, that's another thing, is we're going to have a bunch of new politicians being elected next year if the Conservatives take over. How are those politicians going to come in and look at this? Because they've been watching what's been going on over the last few years, and that's traditionally not how our government should function. But it's everyone working together. We need our provinces to work together. We need our municipalities to work together, because a municipality can't solve the homeless crisis by themselves. They can't. The province also can't just solve it by themselves, because provincially, if you have a large number of First Nations people that are, populating prison systems, and that's a statistic, that overpopulated prisons and homeless and addictions and stuff like that. This is where we really need, as a society, all hands on deck. And some people are going to need to recognize the fact that you're going to have to put your partisanship aside. I have a conservative premier in Saskatchewan. It's the SAS party, which is formerly the Liberal and Progressive Conservatives that formed. But, it's yes, I do want you to take a stand against Ottawa on certain issues, but I only want that to go so far, to the point where I'm also going to need you to work with the Liberals here. my partisanship does not extend beyond what the betterment of society is. And at the end of the day, I'm going to need, our mayor, our premier, our MLAs, our MPs. I'm going to need you guys all to work together here, because Trudeau can't just come in and wave a wand. My premier can't just come in and wave a wand. And that's the problem now, is everybody's so dysfunctional that nothing is getting done.
I think you brought up a good point that I actually haven't thought about, because I'm thinking about the environment that these new politicians are coming into. I think I'll take Michelle Ferrari as an example. She just recently got into politics like back in 2018. So I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of people like her who were weren't really involved in politics, then like became an MP. And we're going to start seeing that here with a lot of these conservatives coming in. There's actually a guy from Halifax who actually moved to Ontario to run in one of the ridings there, which he'll likely win. And we're talking about our Decorum situation. I think you bring up a good point. What does Parliament look like with all these newbies who've seen nothing but hostility in politics? And how are they going to react? And how are they going to interact with the opposition? And essentially at some point, I'm sure that's kind of typically how things go in Canadian politics. You start with a solid majority. You might be able to get another majority, but then eventually by the end, you either lose or get a minority. In that case, you're going to have to start working with people. What happens there? And then, what, as you said, what precedent does this actually set, seeing how hostile things have become?
I think there's undoubtedly the issue of the chronically online as well. And I use that term and people are kind of like, oh, whatever. But it's like, no, like, think about that for a second here. Our government traditionally used to govern, and the day-to-day basis would end up in our newspapers or whatever it needed to. More so specifically, probably our parents and our grandparents. That's how they heard about government. But now, undoubtedly, we have politicians across the country that are politicking for the social media. Like, we're governing for the online. And that's also a terrible idea, because they're like, never make decisions based solely off of what's getting you clicks and views on social media. Because even Twitter, sometimes I'll see a politician doing something and I'm like, why are you destroying your credibility for a tweet? Like, never traditionally in the history of Canadian politics did we see politicians destroying their entire credibility to go post something online. Like, this is all modern day, right? Like, we're almost evolving and learning as we go. And that's another thing, is it's going to become a popularity contest where traditionally the people that used to become MPs, I have a photo of John Diefenbaker back there. He was a lawyer first. And that's kind of what we were used to seeing, is our businessmen, and traditionally very overpopulated with men in politics, but our businessmen and our lawyers and our kind of our stewards of our communities were our MPs. And now it's, a popularity contest. And I am concerned about that, because I've seen people in, the Conservative Party or whatever it might be, that they're very, very popular online. But I'm like, you might have some takes that people like online, but I'm concerned about your ability to actually govern the country in which we live in. And that's something I think people also need to recognize, because social media is evolving, and we have the chronically online. We have investigative journalists now that have found business models out of grifting, and it's true, and that's affecting our society. It honestly is.
Yeah, I definitely felt that. Like, when we were hanging out back in April, it was interesting kind of seeing the different sects and groups of pockets of the Conservative Party there, and feeling like, okay, me and Reg was like, okay, we see where we slot in here. We're definitely an outsider and definitely not respected, which we haven't done anything to be respected, so we weren't surprised by that. But it was interesting kind of seeing other media personalities or other people who are like, oh, and just seeing how they can be at odds with others. And I'm like, oh, Ottawa's a different game. Ottawa's very different, which was very clear to me. And I think you brought up a great point where, I run my own business on the side. I also do the podcast, essentially run two businesses at the same time. And I split those two lives very differently. I'm on X for my business, and then I'm on X for politics. And those two parts of the X are drastically different. And that's what hit me with your point there, was a lot of these politicians are trying to create content for social media. But like, to the regular person, there's times they just seem so out of touch. I'm like, who are you talking to? And like, understanding who their actual audience is, I think is pretty key.
Well, I also think, this is kind of changing the topic a little bit, not really, is, I posted a video on TikTok tonight that I said was kind of a hot take of talking about the chronically online. And my concern now is like the mental health aspect.
Mm.
Like I love creating political content, whatever. Like I'll see what kind of goes on. I don't really do as much of it anymore as I used to, but I've watched this firsthand where there's people that are so far gone down rabbit holes where it's like, are you okay? Like, I think there's a point too where these, going back to my point about liberals now, liberal partisans attacking like respected liberal journalists because they're not feeding into these conspiracies, but they're looking for anything they can grasp onto and to advance. And it's like the average Canadian, number one, most undecided voters aren't sitting on the internet every day watching what you're posting. You're literally fueling the fire for your partisans that already follow you. But yeah, I find it so wild and I'm like, I honestly don't see how you're like, you can go to sleep at night, like living your days online, just going down these rabbit holes, and this can't be good for society. And some of them have kids and I'm like, who's watching your kids? Like, holy man, like that's another one. And I've been a part of it. Like I have actually, like most people that have followed me watched it happen in the spring where I sat back online and watched the chronically online just spin a narrative that didn't exist. It's like, oh, she's being paid to travel with Pierre Poilievre and, she's being paid to post her content, which I can say wholeheartedly has never happened. And I actually encourage somebody to prove otherwise because it never happened. And I got to the point where like I retained a lawyer and I was like, let's go to court over it. Because it got to the point where it's like, you almost have to teach some of these people a lesson of like, get off the internet. Like you're going down a rabbit hole that never existed. And until you actually watch it happen for yourself in real time where these people just, and they're so confident and it's like, and you're so wrong and man, get off the internet, go hang out with your family, go touch grass, like do something.
For sure. I couldn't agree more. There's we all know who those people are. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
All right, here we go. But last question I got for you before we end off. We are less than a month away from a big event happening south of the border. One of the presidential candidates has had a handful of attempts on his life, and the other pretty much just got installed into the position of running for president and wasn't actually fairly elected by their party. We're running some interesting times down there. What do you think, if any, what kind of impact do you think the result of that election is going to have up here next year?
I don't think it'll have. It's really hard to say. I was listening to the John Bray show the other day. It's like a talk show in Saskatchewan. John Gormley used to be on, a former Conservative MP. He was the guest on that with another political scientist from the University of Saskatchewan, and they were discussing this. And he said that he thinks the average Canadian's political memory is 100 days, like 100 days for the major impact to happen, and then everybody kind of like moves from there. And I was like really trying to think about this, but you know what? I don't know. I don't know about that because again, we go back to the point of like where our society is going, where we have people excusing the fact that somebody literally tried to unalive the president. Where like, again, foundations of democracy, you don't try to kill the president or former president, sorry. And you know what? Aside from the fact that you don't try to take anybody's life, you don't try to assassinate former presidents. Like you don't do that. And it's, now we've reached a society, well, there's some people that are like, well, in this case, it's like, no, we do not negotiate the criminal code in Canada. We don't negotiate the laws in the United States. You do not, as a human being, have the right to take somebody else's life. Like the fact we're even negotiating this is insane.
Yeah. And admittedly, that's kind of the first thought that kind of came to mind for me too. And when I saw this happen, I'm like, okay, like, obviously the first thought that went through was like, man, if that succeeded. And one of these spin-off results I would have seen is like, okay, if that succeeded, what does that mean for our leader up here? Do people start getting ideas of like, okay, well, that's how they solved their political differences down there. We might need to do the same up here. And like, thank goodness that didn't happen. But like, I'm like, just that tension and our House of Commons isn't helping. And there's MPs who I don't even think they should be MPs at this point in the way they act. I'm like, this, as you said, it just fuels more of a lot of the tension. And based on the result of what happens here in the States, I think we talked about at the beginning of the podcast where, depending on how our election goes, people are like, oh, they didn't actually win. They cheated. I could see that happening too. I just hope, I'm not hopeful, but I'm still hoping that there's just a clear election in the States, so that at least sets us up for success next year here.
Yeah, I think, yeah, for sure. And I think, our political landscape has changed a lot. And I think that should concern people. Every party is playing a role into it. You have conservatives that, like Pierre, the more angry people get, the better he does. And then you have Justin Trudeau that thinks that gaslighting his way out of it is going to be effective. And then you have Jagmeet Singh that's riding his bike and flailing about. I don't even know if he knows what's going on at any given time. Our politicians are just, and then Quebec is talking about Quebec as they're going to, and Elizabeth May is doing whatever she's doing. Honestly, at this point, I think the only one who is actually like showing up to Parliament and kind of has a grasp on what's going on is Kevin Vaughn, and he's an independent.
Right.
Everyone else is kind of just like, la-di-da. And, it does concern me because, again, you get back to that like foundation of democracy and respect the rule of law. And I've watched conservatives do it, where Melanie Joly will have someone screaming in her face, and I have conservatives I'm watching sit back, say, good for her. And I'm like, guys, like, you realize that like people going up and screaming at a minister in our government is not acceptable. And even in my time of when I worked for the House of Commons, the first year that I worked there, things changed. The Sergeant at Arms is issuing, warnings consistently. And I don't know anymore, but when I was there, there were like even constituency offices were having to change like their security protocols because things are changing. And, MPs are getting screamed at on planes. And again, it's because it goes viral. And it's just, I'm honestly getting so concerned. And I know like I became a House of Commons staffer after the terrorist attack on Parliament Hill. And I know that drastically changed everything. Even going into Parliament buildings is entirely different now. But I actually would be curious about the statistics of how many more Sergeant at Arms officers there are now, because our politicians are in a way scarier position than they used to be.
Yeah, like even, with the situation that happened just a handful of weeks ago with Jagmeet getting into it with a protester. And that was, that was heated, but that was very small compared to what else has happened when politicians are running from one building to the next in Ottawa. Like, even for myself, when we were there, I was personally surprised at how close I was getting to people like Chrystia Freeland or other high-profile politicians. And I'm like, the former UK Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. I was just like arm's length away from him. I was like, with like two people guarding him. I'm like, I don't know how, like, this is like, I love it for Canada, but like the way things are going, that can start changing. Those black cars are going to be populating more Parliament Hill more and more because people aren't going to be able to walk freely. And I think those are great points that you brought up. Just like, we hope things can get under control. We hope cooler heads prevail, but yeah, things have changed here, unfortunately. And you can point. I have my own ideas of who fingers I'd point of what happened, but everyone's gonna have their own ideas. The fact of the matter is, just things are divisive, and it is what it is, unfortunately. Yeah. Let's go, Jennifer. Let's go. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there anything you want to end us off with? I do have a couple of these comments here. I'm going to sift through, see if there's anything of worth in terms of, like, everyone's great. We love your comments. You guys are awesome. But sometimes people have good questions is more so what I was getting at there.
No, I've been trying to read the comments to see if anyone had any questions, but I think it's good. It's just,
people have some,
it's kind of hard to keep up with, but yeah.
It is, right? When you're
it's
talking.
been good.
Yeah, things are kind of sifting through. Someone told me that I should run for mayor, and I'm like, don't tempt me. I had the idea. Don't get me wrong. I had the idea. I was like,
that's what I mean. People on the internet suddenly, like, just because you run a podcast doesn't mean you can run a city.
Seriously.
Respectfully.
Yeah. Okay, this is how I would run the city. I would 100% find out all the major infrastructure that we need to be dealt with, and I would find the experts in those areas and let them run it. That's how I'd run mayor. And I would just have weekly conversations with each of these people. Like, all right, where's the progress? Where we're at? I would literally run it like I run my company. 100% status updates. Are you doing your job? Things are looking good. All right. How you doing? Keep them moving. And that's all I do. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if that's even effective or not, but that's that. Just because I run a podcast, this means I'd be a good mayor, y'all. But I think I'd be better than Andy Fillmore. I'll say that much.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Oh, God bless. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on the show. It really means the world. And I got to get my cursor here to get my screen up. You guys are awesome. So grateful for all of you. Thank you for all of your great comments and everything you keep bringing to the podcast every single week. We'll be getting into more on Thursday. But as for me and as for Jennifer, we hope you enjoy your night. Whatever it is you're doing, whether it be hanging out with friends, watching sports, or just vibing with the evening. Whatever it is you're doing, wherever you are, we love you. We're out. Peace.